Joining me now is former senior deputy district attorney in Orange County, Matt Murphy. Matt, I want to start with what Brian was just reporting about. Many witnesses say there was an argument the night before their bodies were discovered between Rob Reiner and his wife, Michele, and their son, Nick, who was also at the party. An argument very loud, witnessed by many people, and that afterwards Rob and Michele left the party. It really sets the stage there. Something must have happened to then lead to what happened.
It sure does. And I'll tell you, behind the scenes right now, these cases are always horrible. This is known as parricide. This is when somebody murders their parents. The last one of these I did, what the DA is doing right now is trying to figure out how much of this may have been motivated by organic mental illness versus just addiction. Addiction is something that touches every one of us in America, especially in the modern day. And that fight is really important, because that if you can show up to a party and present and shake hands and know that you're surrounded by people, it means that any sort of mental health defense is probably not going to fly.
There were people at the party who reported that Nick appeared to be under the influence of some sort of substance. Michele had been telling friends in the past few weeks, even months, that they were at their wits' end. It sounds like after maybe a period of time of some sobriety or being clean off drugs, that demon may have come back for him, and that the family was at really a point of desperation.
Well, they made a movie together that was roughly autobiographical.
Right.
And his drug addiction, apparently, I think his first stint was when he was 15 years old.
15.
From the view of a prosecutor who is reviewing this case, as well as mental health professionals that will be called in to evaluate it, and ultimately a jury, there's a big difference between somebody who's organically mentally ill into something horrible like this versus somebody who is maybe spoiled, entitled, rich kid growing up in a privileged environment, which Brentwood certainly is, that gets mad at dad and loses it and kills him and his mother.
A theme in the movie and in the interviews that Nick has given and that Rob Reiner has given is the fact that Nick feels like his parents forced him to go to treatment facilities all around the country. Rob Reiner, in some interviews, said, I might have made mistakes. I didn't listen to Nick. I listened to the people with the diplomas on the walls.
Right. Now, this is, I think a lot of people would find a sharp contrast between that circumstance and somebody who's homeless because they are either so mentally ill, they've run out of support, they don't have any of it in their life. The reason he was homeless, based on what I've read so far, is he refused to go to rehab again. So refusing to go to rehab and kind of having a tantrum, not that we know exactly what the evidence is yet, but leaving and becoming homeless and living in a shelter because of that is very different than I think what a lot of people face homelessness.
How significant is it that Romy, who lived across the street, went to check on her parents? She immediately told the police when she found their bodies it was Nick. He's, quote, dangerous.
Yeah, it's awful. For the defense, number one, it's a horrible situation for Romy Reiner. That's awful.
She'll never recover from that.
She'll never recover. And let me tell you, having walked through this almost exact scene where parents have been stabbed to death by a mentally ill son, they're impossibly brutal scenes. They tend to be very bloody. People fight. It's not like the movies where you get stabbed once and you drop dead. People, they die of what's known as exsanguination. That's bleeding that requires minutes, and they tend to run around, and it tends to be horrific.
Yeah, okay, but what about the fact also that she said right off the bat, I mean, it wasn't like, who could have done this?
Right.
She told them it's my brother.
Right, and what that does is that there's going to be so much history there, and even in the movie, there are violent confrontations between the character in that, which essentially is him, and the dad, which is
Rob Reiner.
Rob Reiner, that's right. And another thing about that movie and all the interviews, when you watch him in an interview, he's not barking at the moon. He's not. It appears to be, based on what we have so far, this appears to be good old-fashioned addiction that's coming and doing this, not organic mental illness. And as the process goes forward, that is hugely important.
Police have been exceedingly careful to do things very, very carefully. They know this case is under a microscope. I was very surprised last night that 6 hours after the bodies had been discovered, the police had not gone through the home and processed the crime scene because they were waiting for a search warrant. There were no signs of forced entry into the home. But there are reports that Nick was living in the guest house behind the big house where the Rob Reiner and his wife were found.
Right.
In that case, he has a presumption of some sort of privacy.
Well, they're doing it right. it's vitally important that anytime a criminal defendant or a suspect has any argument for a reasonable expectation of privacy, it's always better to cut the warrant, cut the paper, it's called, take it to a judge, because otherwise, theoretically, the defense could suppress the actual discovery of the bodies.
Right.
Theoretically, there's so much evidence that you could lose if that's his property without getting a warrant. It's always much better to take the time and have a judge sign off on it so that all that evidence is admissible.
He appears in court very early tomorrow morning. We'll learn more then at that point about what evidence prosecutors may have assembled?
I think so. Now, and it's also important to remember the days of George Gascon are over in L.A., thank God. And we have Nathan Hochman, who's the DA.
He's been on this show many times.
Yeah, this is going to be handled professionally, and it's going to be done right.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.